All right. Sorry, I've got some technical issues happening today. So welcome everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you're joining us from today. We're so happy that you're here with us, and we're just delighted to have Liz Carver with us today, sharing what's on her heart. I just wanted to give you a couple of announcements before we get going, and the wonderful Clare is going to have our monthly newsletter up for you to kind of observe. I'm going to highlight just a couple of things we have coming up that you will not want to miss. Our dearest Rosemary, she's fantastic. She's on the board of our Great Lakes regional chapter. She has got some things coming up in June, some opportunities for you to learn more about your type, to take a deep dive. And then she also does bi-weekly discussions online. So you can reach out to her, either email her at rosepetalmusic@gmail.com, and I'll drop all of this in the chat box. So if you don't catch it the first time around, don't worry at all. We also have some training opportunities for you coming up. Our Motions of the Soul training is fabulous. One of the best decisions that I ever made was to go through this training. So if you're looking for community, if you're looking for some training opportunities, a certification process, this is a great one. Also, Dr. Jerome Wagner has one coming up this year. His is going to be, let me see here, September 27th through November the 3rd. And that's the Enneagram spectrum approach. So be sure to check those out. Maybe one of those is right for you. If you want to get on our mailing list and you aren't already, just send us an email. Our email address is IEAGreatLakes@gmail.com. And I'll drop that in the chat box for you as well, so you have access to all the upcoming opportunities. You can also find us on Facebook just by searching IEA Great Lakes chapter, but it's fb.com/IEA Great Lakes chapter. You can find us there. And also brand new for us is our Instagram page. So you can find us there. It's the @ symbol, Enneagram_Great_Lakes. So find us on Instagram and follow us, and share that page with your friends. We're testing that out to see if we can reach a little bit different group of people. Some people aren't on Facebook. Some people don't like newsletters. So we're trying that out. So find us on Instagram and share that page.
Did you say anything about our Great Lakes YouTube channel, Linz?
Oh, so yes, we do have a YouTube channel where all of our Midday Cafe videos will go after they're recorded. So if you've missed any in the past that you want to catch up on, you can find our YouTube channel, IEAGLR. You can put that in the search and it should take you right to our YouTube channel.
Awesome. Let's hear it for Lindsay taking over for Danielle today. And while Danielle is in Machu Picchu. And so, she's going to try to join us. Don't know if that's going to happen, but who knows? Who knows what could happen today? Good things. So we are really grateful that Liz Carver has joined us today. Liz is a brilliant author, designer, creator, Instagram boss. I mean, she has quite a plethora of talents. And I just want to show you her page, lizcarver.com. Make sure you check her out. Let me leave that page. This is Liz's website, and you can find all of the things she does, from art to blogging, the work that she's done. I mean, she's been featured in some really amazing places. If you read our Facebook post or you got the newsletter, you know that she's been featured on HGTV, Brickyard Buffalo, the Journal Sentinel, Nordstrom, Amazon, Barnes and Noble. So you are about to enjoy a moment with a person who is really connected to her left brain as a 5, her right brain as a 2, and her brain stem as an 8. And she's been doing really good work with the Enneagram for about 5 years now. And one of the things when I met Liz, actually this time last year, Liz, was where we met at Soul Care Institute. And so the folks at Soul Care were reading our book, and many of them came up and said, well, do you know that we have our own celebrity right here in our Soul Care cohort? And so we got to meet Liz, and Liz has given herself to a lot of really good work in her adult life. And I think one of the things that she has coming up has brought a really important topic to the forefront for us. I said, what are you percolating with, Liz? What would you like to come and talk about at Midday Cafe? And Liz, tell them what you said.
I said pilgrimage. The Enneagram as pilgrimage is what has been in my mind and on my heart. It's largely because I am planning to, in about 3 weeks, go on my own pilgrimage to northern Spain and to hike the Camino for the first time. Well, I did one day of it one time, but so that's what's really been at the forefront of my mind.
Yeah, and anybody else, just kind of with a raise of hands. I know several of you don't have your screens on. We'd love to see you if you can. But how many of you have done a pilgrimage, like that you would actually call a pilgrimage? You've all done one because you're alive and you've been on a pilgrimage of your soul for your whole life long. But how many have gone on an official pilgrimage? Either use the reaction button with your hand or just raise it up. Yeah. So we just want to say, you can do it, Liz. How many days is the Camino pilgrimage?
Well, it depends on which direction you're going and which route you're taking. We're going to start in northern France or southern France, and we're going to do the French route, it's called. And we have about 4 weeks to complete it. Hopefully we will get it done in 4 weeks. Well, we will. I have to come back to work. So some people take a little shorter and some people take a little longer.
Mm-hmm. Well, and one of the things that that really intrigued me about Liz's journey, she studied at Fuller, and she has done work both in what some people would call secular and sacred spaces. And so she really has a strong ability to be engaged in both places, and not see the split. And when I first asked Liz about her journey with the Enneagram, she talked about she just started some art, putting it up, and within a couple of days had, I don't know, several thousand followers on Instagram. And then out of that had a publisher approach her and say, would you put together a series of books? And so out of that, they've created 9 Enneagram books, Liz?
10.
10. Did you add an Enneagram number to the circle, or tell me what number 10 is about?
So the first book was an introduction or an overview. It's significantly longer than the other ones, and the others are actually have them here. They're smaller, little self-guided journals or workbooks, but I also use these in coaching with clients. So one for each type, and then one sort of overall.
Beautiful. So how about all of us just take a breath here and know that we're going to be in faithful hands on a little pilgrimage with Liz. And why don't we just take a moment and name our intention for this time? And you can put it in the link if you like, or you can just write it down in your own personal journal there. But let's take about a minute in silence and write down your intention for being here today, or your desire. for being here today and what you hope to gain on a little Enneagram pilgrimage. And so whenever you feel ready to come back to this group here on the screen, and just we welcome everyone to this pilgrimage, and say that any good journey begins with naming our desire. And so if some of us are brave enough to put it in the chat, we can do that, and maybe it will inspire others that don't regularly practice naming their desire to name theirs. So, oh, beautiful. I already see some things happening here. So I'm going to welcome you, Liz, to go ahead and begin our journey here. We might not have on the right boots for this day and this pilgrimage, but we'll do our best.
Well, thank you so much, Claire. I'm going to share my screen here. And it's so fun to see people popping on this call that I know. Somebody from my church here is arrived, which is really cool. And a couple of friends from the training that I did with Claire last January on the Enneagram, which was so wonderful. So yeah, Claire really set this up quite well. The Enneagram is pilgrimage. Hopefully this makes sense to you in the way that it does to me. I'll do my best. Here's just ways to contact me. Let me just get this over with. My personal work is at Liz Carver, and these are my 3 Instagram handles. LizCarver.com is just a portfolio of mine, and also just sort of a hub of the work that I do in general. A lot of it's art. And then Just My Enneatype is the name of the Instagram account that I co-run with my writing partner, Josh Green. And our website for that is myenneatype.com. And then Third Coast Paper is my the business that I run with my sister, and we sell paper goods, but we sell a lot of Enneagram related art and calendars and print products and things like that. Like Claire said, this whole journey for me began a long time ago, actually before I was even in seminary. I was introduced to the Enneagram probably 10 years ago at a place that I was working. And I had always been the person who loved personality typing systems. Myers-Briggs really kind of got me through high school and helped me realize that, you know, I wasn't a weirdo for being an INTJ and a female, that these things can exist, but maybe they're rare. But as I grew and as I got older, I started to realize that as I was becoming more tender and more mature and just more aware of how I was showing up in the world and how I wanted to show up in the world, that Myers-Briggs was kind of keeping me in this closed box of you know, they call it the mastermind, and it's sort of a very harsh and critical type to be. And a lot of those things were getting sorted out of my life just through maturity and growth. And so I was introduced to the Enneagram as another opportunity to learn more about myself. And, you know, I, in my little 5 brain, was like geeking out on another system to learn, right? Like, ooh, more information. And the richness of the Enneagram is so much greater than a personality typing system, but that was definitely the way that that was like my gateway into it. And beginning to work and teach with a good friend of mine here in Milwaukee, Josh, we started this Instagram account, which turned into this first book, which is sort of, I would say, like a 101, and the whole thing is illustrated. So that was largely, I think, what we wanted to do was to try to find ways to make the Enneagram, in our words, beautiful, and also to help people grow with the Enneagram. And so that Instagram account that we have been running then since I think 2019, I want to say, maybe the end of 2018, has really, it's a little stagnant right now, which is intentional for us, but we've tried to make it a place on the internet, on Instagram, where we're pointing people towards personal growth and pointing people towards growth in themselves, and not just putting out memes and not just trying to reinforce who they are, but really trying to help them grow using this powerful tool called the Enneagram. But I want to talk about pilgrimage, and I'm realizing now that some of my slides will be a little cut off, but that's okay. These are just 3 definitions of pilgrimage. The second one, I think, is the one that we're going to cling to for this conversation, which is that it's a long journey or a search, especially one of exalted purpose or of some word that starts with an M and then the word significance. The fact that you are here and the fact that you are Enneagram practitioners and teachers and wise sages, to me, means that you are aware of the fact that the Enneagram is a key tool to use on the pilgrimage of life that we're all on, as Claire said. I have been spending the last 5 months doing pretty much nothing else other than preparing for the Camino de Santiago. I will literally be walking across Spain, northern Spain, from end to end, starting in France. Day 1 is over the Pyrenees. This pilgrimage is no joke. It goes through many different climate regions. It goes through many different regions or like provinces of Spain, and it ends in Santiago de Compostela. On the bottom left, you'll see this image of the marker, the concha, which is the conch shell, and that concha shape is the marker that pilgrims look for along the way. Obviously now we have smartphones, we have cell phones, we have GPS, we can track our way using our smartphones, but you really don't need it to hike the Camino, because you just look for a concha and then you find the next concha and you keep going on your way. But I've been preparing myself physically. I have been going on long training hikes. I have been breaking in my boots. I have been reading in typical 5 fashion, everything I can find, and watching every YouTube video that exists, which is terrifying because you can really get stuck in a YouTube hole just going down the drain of watching Camino videos. And I've been doing this, partly in my sort of autopilot 5 behavior of wanting to shore myself up with knowledge and feel like I can quell anxiety about the unknown if I just learn, or in my case, overlearn. And what's interesting to me is that as I've been reading, as I've been preparing, as I've been watching these YouTube videos, I keep running into 2 lessons. And these are those lessons. The first one is that every person is on their own Camino. Now, I'm traveling with a friend of mine named Audrey. But even though Audrey and I will be walking together, she's going to be on her own Camino and I'm going to be on my own Camino. We will experience the same things, but we are in different bodies, different brains, different hearts, different souls. We're going to experience them in different ways. And there's no one right way to do the Camino, which can be a little bit exhausting sitting on the front end of it, not knowing what it's going to be like. Every person has their own set of packing lists and their own set of rules and regulations and ways to train. Each person is on their own Camino. That's our first lesson. But the second lesson has really just like gutted me. And I think this is what I wanted to bring to you guys today. This idea that a pilgrimage is nothing like my training hikes. My training hikes, I start at my house, I start at my car, I make my way back to my car, or I make my way back to my house. It's a round trip. This pilgrimage is one direction. It's one way. And in fact, every pilgrimage is. That's part of the distinction of what makes it a pilgrimage and not just a trip or a vacation or a walk or a hike or anything like that. This is not a hike, it's a pilgrimage. We're starting in one place and we have a destination that is very far away from it and we're not going back. So I might actually, for part of this, make my screen a little bit smaller. So just heads up in case I do that, but because I really want you guys to see what's on the right-hand side of this. This is a framework that was originally created by Richard Rohr to talk about the spiritual journey, or really to just talk about our journey of life. I received it in an adaptation from Chuck DeGroat. I don't know if you guys know who that is. He's awesome. He's a writer. A book that he wrote on narcissism. He's also a psychiatrist. He's a therapist. A book he wrote on narcissism has a fascinating and challenging chapter on the Enneagram that talks about the 9 faces of narcissism. And that would probably be a great topic actually for one of these lunch sessions. But so I received an adaptation of this from Chuck DeGroat, and then I made a couple of tweaks. So I cited all of that in the bottom left. But basically what this little chart is doing is helping us to understand what this pilgrimage of life looks like. Of course, every chart fails. So some of this is just going to completely miss the mark for you and your experience. But as a whole, I think it really does work. The first half of our life is orientation. It's the heroic journey is what it's called here. We are idealistic. We are egocentric. We are focused on ourselves. We are focused on, we're very self-righteous, especially around 2021. Haven't you noticed? 21-year-olds are especially sweet, but sometimes abrasive with the way they've figured out how to see the world. They figured it out and they know exactly how to see things, right? This is that orientation season of life. We're starting to figure out the boundaries of who we are, what makes us us, and what makes others others. Where do we begin and where do we end? So this is what orientation looks like. Disorientation begins with a crisis, or my change here was to add the word invitation because I do think it is an invitation. In this crisis, we suddenly lose all of the meaning that we had previously. And this can come in many different ways. It can be something we bring upon ourselves. It can be something that is enacted upon us. It can be anything. Anything can be the crisis in our lives. And this is really, I think, where things get interesting in life. This is where we start seeking for help and resources and things beyond ourselves. Let me just make this smaller for one quick second, just so we can see what this reorientation part looks like. Is that looking better? Can I get like a thumbs up, you guys? Okay, I'm seeing nods. Cool, thank you. So reorientation, I think, is where we start to probably find a lot of our clients are in this season of trying to figure out what they're going to do with their life now that things haven't gone the way they thought that they would go. And again, like I said, all models fail, but I think there is some truth to this, that people generally choose one of 3 paths. Either they go back to their old patterns, which is that self-righteous journey that's going up. They don't get it. They didn't learn the lesson that the crisis had offered them. There has been evidence for change. There has been an invitation for change, and yet they go back on autopilot and they keep living the way that they have been living. I feel like that's the American way, right? It's just always climb.
Yeah, let me even ask too. The way you had the slide the last time was much more clear. And I don't know if that's true for everyone. I know Ron and Lindsay have their screens on. Wasn't it better the last time? Yes. With full screen, it was great because and everyone who doesn't realize you can actually pull the bar over and make the speaker smaller and make the slide larger.
Awesome. Great. Thank you, Claire. So that American way, like I was saying, right? Just keep climbing, just keep achieving. And even post-crisis, sometimes that is the response of people. There's also sort of on the opposite end, this wisdom journey, which goes dark and deep into the dark night of the soul. The dark night of the soul is not the crisis. The dark night of the soul is not the invitation. It's what we do after the invitation. When we keep letting the change that has been brought to us actually start to work itself out. This is a time of, I think what it says here is painful insights and major surgery, like soul surgery. We cannot fake, and a lot of the language here is spiritual language, so we're going to take it somewhat out of context and apply it to life in general, but we can't go back anymore to the way things used to be. And we know. And for a season, it looks like we're actually going down. And eventually, this wisdom journey will lead us into, those people you meet who are, old and wise and holy and serene and emanate goodness and wisdom. And you can just tell that they have been through stuff and they have done their work. This is that journey, right? But there's also a third way, which is to not learn any lesson whatsoever, to remain in a place of woundedness, and to not actually recover from that crisis and what it did to you. And that's called the embittering or the apathetic journey. I think this is a helpful chart in a lot of ways for a lot of different seasons and a lot of different reasons. Okay, Enneagram or not, I think, feel free to screenshot it if you want to. Like this, I think it's a helpful chart. I'm going to apply it now to the Enneagram. A couple of years ago, I found myself in a place where I was starting to think that maybe the Enneagram had just served its usefulness in my life. And I know that sounds maybe arrogant of me or immature of me, but I'd been working it for 7 or 8 years and it was super helpful. And I was just kind of finding that it wasn't that helpful anymore. And processing through this idea of pilgrimage, using this chart in other teaching settings that I've used it, and now bringing the Enneagram into the conversation, I feel like it makes a lot of sense to me. And it's because I was trying to use that diagnostic Enneagram, the process arrow theory. I'm going to call that diagnostic Enneagram today. I was trying to use the diagnostic Enneagram as a way to grow, which I'm all about growth with the Enneagram growth, trying to use it as a way to grow well into my post-reckoning life here, into the wisdom journey, and it wasn't serving me anymore. As a 5, my path to growth looks like 8. So what does that mean? Get in your body, listen to your instincts. Beyond that, how much more can I really do? And I was doing that for years. I was like, okay, like I'm healthiest and my best if I can just get out of my head and get in my body and, use some of my leadership gifts to help and advocate for other people instead of being isolated. Okay, all of that's really good. But what I was actually finding that was helping as I was in that dark night of the soul, or that was happening in my own life, was that I was starting to show up kind of too like. I was very, not in a codependent, clingy way, but in a loving, self-sacrificing, wounds open to the world, how can I serve you sort of way. And at this point, I was introduced to the Harmony Enneagram, which to me was a huge light bulb because it finally made sense to me that the diagnostic Enneagram had served its purpose and it had done what it was supposed to do. It helped me identify my home base. Here's who I am on autopilot. Here's how I roll. But post-reckoning, I really needed to dig into the gifts and the opportunities that the Harmony Enneagram allows us to do. And Claire did not ask me to talk about this, by the way. And I realized I am plugging her trainings and her, her work, but it's truly because I see the evidence of it in the world around me. A wonderful friend of mine who's on this call right now, well, I don't know, I actually can't see them anymore, but I think they probably are. When I first met her, she was in her reckoning. This was a couple of years ago, and she cried constantly. Yet she told me she was a 7 on the Enneagram, and I saw that, right? I saw her life of the party, like the positive spin that she was putting on things, even while she was literally sobbing her way through it. My dad has been difficult to type, but I think it's because he's been in the second half of life for so long that that first half of life is almost irrelevant at this point. And I think that, I mean, I can tell you many other stories of 4s who seem like 7s. 7 and 4 seems to be this like massive connection. Or, 2s who become much more 5-like as time goes on. I think there's something to this. So here's the 2 Enneagrams, the diagnostic Enneagram and the harmony Enneagram. I've, in my artsy self, have identified a color for each type, so you'll see those pretty consistently. I don't know if you guys have seen the memes online where it'll be like, a pregnant woman and says how it started, and then she's like holding the baby over her belly and it's like how it's going, right? Have you guys seen these memes? They're everywhere. To me, this is like my graphic design version of trying to get at how it started and how it's going for me. 5-ness being this little green cube. That's the color I use for 5. Separated but close to 2. Separated but close to my 4 wing. Separated but close to 8, where I move. Separated but close to 7, which is my disintegration, right? Using the diagnostic. But the reality is, what it actually feels like to be me at this point is more like the right side, where there's these multiple colors that are just sort of radiating and they're blurry, and the 7 is, or not the 7, the 5 is still there, the 8 is there, the 2 is there. There's blurry edges now. You kind of can't figure out where one starts and where one ends. Okay, you guys still with me?
We are with you, and you've got my favorite chart up.
I don't know if you're making fun of me, but that's okay if you are, because
I'm not.
It's a little crazy.
No, you remember after I read your paper with all of your fabulous graphics, I'm like, okay, Liz, explain this chart to me. I'm intrigued. I love it.
So let me explain this chart. This was my attempt at trying to put into some sort of graphic form not in the first half of life. The diagnostic Enneagram is incredibly helpful. It diagnoses us, right? It helps us understand who we are, what's our home base. But at a certain point, I think it actually, if we keep working it, I think it starts to limit us. And let's go through 2 as an example. So you can see this 2 column here. And along the left, we have all of these different facets or markers of the Enneagram: 3 intelligence centers, stances, styles. In the diagnostic Enneagram, and that's what this chart represents right here, you only have a 2 would only have access to their gut intelligence center through disintegration. That's why there's that little red minus sign. It's like, yeah, you could get there, but it's bad, right? Likewise, a 2 can only access that assertive or aggressive stance, that energy, if they're in disintegration, which is bad. They only get to intensity, which is helpful and necessary for everyone, if they're in disintegration. Likewise, they have no connection whatsoever to their head center and their, what Clare calls, maybe other people call this as well, they're called 2-hearted, right? 2 points of connection with their heart intelligence, but no head intelligence. Well, we just know that, like, just logically and practically, that doesn't make a lot of sense. Likewise, they have no competency in this setting. That's not great. And we could break it down for any other type. Meanwhile, if you look at the harmony Enneagram, which is what this sheet is showing right now, you can see that there's no more negative movement, right? There's no disintegrative movement. Everything is integrative. And because everything is integrative, and because you have a connection point, and it's not just with head, heart, and gut, it's also with withdrawing, aggressive, dependent, competency, optimism, and intensity. All 9 types using the harmony Enneagram have access, for lack of a better word, to optimism, competency, and intensity, to the aggressive side of themselves, the dependent side of themselves, and the withdrawing side of themselves. And then, of course, to all 3 intelligence centers. And I feel like that for me was such a light bulb moment, because what happens the more you work the Enneagram, and the reason why I was starting to feel like it was losing its, value, I would say, in my life, is because I felt like what had originally told me that I was going to get out of a box, right? That wonderful Ian Cron quote, the Enneagram tells you what box you've been living in and how you can get out of it. Beautiful. I've been living in the 5 box and I can get out of it. actually what it starts to do if you're not working something like the harmony Enneagram is it starts to put you back further into that box. You start to tell yourself, well, I'm a withdrawing type. So, I mean, sometimes that's good. So I can withdraw in this situation where I really need to. But sometimes we don't need to withdraw. Sometimes we actually need to move towards people. Sometimes we actually need to push against people. Or, you know, well, I'm in the head center, you know, like this is my intelligence style. Well, that's actually not the way I was created. Why do I have gut intelligence? Why do I have, you know, empathy and things like this? So for me, this chart was just sort of solidifying this idea that, you know, the diagnostic Enneagram, incredibly helpful for what it is, but it does have limits, and that's okay. And at a certain point, I think we need to graduate to the harmony Enneagram. So I'm sure there's a million more things that I could have put on here, but these are just sort of the three things at front of mind for me. Why does it matter? Why does it matter that life is a pilgrimage? Why does it matter that the Enneagram is a tool we can use along the pilgrimage? Why does it matter that maybe my theory that I'm proposing to you guys today, the diagnostic Enneagram, super helpful in the first half of life? You know, there's a reason why some of these great Enneagram teachers will tell you, well, look back to who you were when you were 20. Yeah, first half of life, in the peak of your egocentrism and your black and white thinking and your, you know, defining, shoring up the sandbags of who you are and what your personality is, right? There's a reason why that is helpful in that first half of life. But at a certain point, when we hit that crisis, when we're post-reckoning, when we're trying to sort through how am I going to move forward with my life, we need more tools. And I think the harmony gives us that. So the three things I wrote here is, you know, I think number one, helping our clients navigate their own pilgrimage with better tools and language to help them along the way. Language is huge. And it's not just because I love to write. It's because when, you know, and as somebody who's right now shoring up my Spanish again, I'm reminded of the fact that knowing two languages is like 50 times better than knowing just one language. I can't even imagine if I were trilingual, right? There are so many words we lack in English that Spanish gives us. And I'm sure the same is true for other languages I don't know as well. Secondly, it helps us understand both the gifts and the limitations of the diagnostic and the harmony Enneagrams, and when we need to use them and when we need to introduce them. And I think it's a gentle introduction. Like, again, Clare is the master of the harmony, okay? So you might not like what I'm about to say, but I don't think the harmony Enneagram is helpful for a novice. I think it's helpful when you're doing your work and when you're hitting that crisis, when you're hitting that reckoning. I think we need to introduce people to this idea using something that is more diagnostic in nature and a little bit more limited. It's like we're not ready for solid food yet. We're still just drinking milk. And I think diagnostic is the milk and harmony is the food. And then finally, you can't get to your destination if you don't know where you are. So this is true for us as well as for, you know, people that we're working with or workshops that we're teaching. It's just incredibly helpful to be able to look at, you know, a timeline or a chart or whatever. If you hate that chart, you know, find a different one just to be able to identify, here's where I'm at today. And, you know, here's where I'd like to go. So Q&R is Clare's wonderful term. What are you guys thinking? Is anything shimmering for you? Is anything helpful? Is anything not helpful?
Yeah, let me even begin, Liz, just by saying I absolutely affirm your thoughts around first half of life and the diagnostic. It's well said. And I think 21 is a good age to use, because what I have discovered in children is they live far more in their harmony before the age of 7 if they haven't experienced great trauma, you know, in those first 7 years, that you actually see them engaging fully, head, heart, and gut in ways that are astounding. But as soon as life starts to happen and maybe we have our childhood wound, or as my friend Chris calls it, a kid life crisis, there, you know, that's when the disintegration or the split or the fragmentation begins to show up. And so, yeah, I love using the age of 21 as a really fully orbed egocentricity, because that's where you decided what you want to do with your life and who you want to date and what you want people to think of you and all of those kinds of things. And so, yeah, really beautifully done. I affirm your thoughts on the age of 21.
Thank you.
What else, everyone? What questions are percolating for you?
Well, Liz, that was beautiful. I'm just wondering if you have you read Cheryl Strayed's book, Wild?
No.
You might like it. I just wanted to offer that to you. She, what's it called? The Pacific Crest Trail. The book chronicles her
the
hike.
movie, but yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So the book was really incredible about her own pilgrimage hiking that trail. So you might like it.
Thank you. I would say one of the most helpful books I've read that would be great, even if you weren't doing any sort of physical trek, is called Pilgrimage of the Soul. It's by Phileena Hewerts. And it is just like, talk about that surgery on your soul. It's one of the best books I've read. And from her was really that initial aha moment for me that a pilgrimage is one direction and you never go back and you'll never be the same, right? Just like life, just like other things that we experience. You know, there are other things like parenthood or, you know, other examples of pilgrimage where it's like, and we'll never be the same again, right? Well, I have some art I want to show you guys, but I want to give a little more time.
And Liz, I wonder, did Lene, did you have a question? Is that how you, yep, she has her
Yeah.
hand up.
Well, I just want to say, Liz, I've walked just a tiny portion of the Camino, the last about 70 miles of it, and Buen Camino. And my husband went with me, who's a 5. And I'm really excited for your journey because you are going to learn things in your body. And it's going to feel so integrated. My husband absolutely loved it, went back. We're actually going again in June. So Buen Camino, may the blisters and the staff and the backpack all give their lessons to you. And I love your colors. Thank you for putting black and white in there for us ones. Awesome. Not just rainbow.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, no, definitely black and white. Well, thank you so much. Yeah, Buen Camino is it means good, you know, good like good way, like good journey. And I'm actually going to get it put on my nails before I go. So, well, I'd love to show you guys some art. Feel free to jump in. Okay, because I'm in this presenter mode, it's not letting me see the chat. So Claire, if you can just like, if somebody says something, you know, interrupt me, please. I want to show you guys some artwork with a little bit of the time that we have left. This is something Claire asked me to do, so I hope you enjoy it. This was a collaboration with a good friend of mine, Kelly Wagner, who's an illustrator, and she works at Kohl's. So if you buy things at Kohl's, you may have bought something that she made for you. So this is our type 1s, and I'm going to pull up our Instagram account just because I think one of the greatest teachers of the Enneagram for me in the last couple of years has really just been Instagram, and has been, you know, I mean, obviously there's like trolls and things on there, but people are so vulnerable in this space, and it's very terrifying and also gratifying as an artist to be able to put your artwork up and to have immediate feedback on whether it's resonating or not. So I would say largely this series did resonate with people, and actually we sell this on the Third Crust Paper website. So this was for type 1, and the colors that I picked out many years ago is black and white, and they're the only type that gets 2 colors, and they get the 2 that are the fullness of color and also the absence of color at the same time. Some of that is just, you know, reflecting the sort of black and white thinking that some ones can be prone to, but I think it's also reflecting sort of like perfection. In art, black and white photography is like the ideal, right? if something works in black and white in graphic design, it means it will work in color. And it doesn't work the other way around, right? Black and white is where we begin. And that's always, you know, sort of this anchor point for us, just like ones are. But of course, this figure here is buttoned up in her nice little collar, and she's perfectly centered right down the middle. And she's holding things in tension. And I think it's important to note that there's so much more cloudiness and so much more heaviness on the black side, but that it hasn't changed her perspective. It was also important to us that her eyes would be closed. This idea that she's going inward to seek out, you know, ethics and justice and integrity. That's all coming. It's being sourced from within, and it's not being sourced from without, which I think is very true of type ones. Let me just see if any of these comments are. You know what, we'll do comments for the next one because I remember there was a 2-1 that was really great. But this is what we put together for type ones. For type 2,
you just had a big thumbs up from our one Wendy Roby saying, oh, it was brilliant.
Oh, thank you, Wendy. So this is type 2. We wanted to show, first of all, a man, just to try to push back against some stereotypes that caring and nurturing are intrinsically feminine qualities. And we also wanted this guy to be completely unfazed by the quantity of people that he was caring for all at once. Some people are, I would say, not being as kind to him and kind of abusing him. Like this guy climbing up his ear doesn't seem to care at all. He's just like, get me up there, right? But then there are other people who are just enjoying his company, or, you know, perched high on top of his head. And there's so much happening, right? There are so many different types of people doing different types of activities at all ages and stages of life. And this guy is able to, with his little servant white glove, hold everything up. Here's a quote, a comment from our Instagram account from Clare 7334. She said, I find it funny that the server is waiting on others. Such is the heart of a 2, always willing to assist, lift up, and attend to the needs of those around them. When I was a kid, I always thought that I could make a life as a butler. Although I had in mind Alfred from Batman, Alfred was always there for Bruce Wayne through thick and thin. And then another comment, I don't know if it was supposed to look this way, but people are literally walking all over us like a doormat. But maybe that's the point. We should recognize when people take advantage of us and put them down, lift up those who really care about us, and tell us to make time for ourselves too. Love that Instagram community. Here's type 3. We really wanted to show sort of like the dichotomy between 3, that 3s are both what we see on the lower left, visionary, looking somewhere that the rest of us can't see yet. But also we wanted to show that momentum and the activeness of 3s, because we all know that 3s get a lot done. Here's some quotes from some people on our Instagram. CE Alex said, I love that it's in the clouds too, because immediately I start trying to see shapes there. 3s can be super creative as we try to reach our goals. It's not all beaten path, gotta fill expectations, achieving at all times, which I think is a great reminder. And then Faith Ann said, this is perfect. I feel like we 3s so often get a bad rap of being fake, but this is good. It truly depicts how my brain works outside of gotta do more. Life to me is a never-ending staircase of possibilities. Thank you for this. So trying to get at some of that.
Yeah, well, you brought the 2 to tears, Lindsay to tears here. And I, as I told you, when I first saw this one, it was not, it like hit me as a trigger around people who think that 3s are just trying to climb the corporate ladder. And so I loved your explanation. It actually dropped down into the soul of a 3 and not in the caricature at all.
Thank you, Claire. I think sometimes, yeah, with someone else's interpretation, right? It's hard to, I don't know, there can be a lot of layers to what we do, right? So this is for type 4. I mean, first of all, we wanted to show a non-binary person for type 4. We thought that was really important. And also, I think one of the key elements here is sort of this, there's a Casey Musgrave song that's called Happy and Sad at the Same Time. And I feel like that is what this image is. You know, the top half, you see hot air balloons, and the bottom half are lightning bolts and rain clouds. There's so much creativity being expressed, which I know, you know, can be a little overdone when we're trying to depict our type 4s, but honestly, that is who they are. We see this in this person's hair, in their tattoo. But my favorite part is actually the earring, which reflects both that sunshine and also it drips down into a raindrop. Here's some things that 4s had to say. I love that both the storm clouds and the sunlit sky are shown. I hear so much about how 4s can embrace pain, and while that's true, all of the feelings are welcome, which I think is good for us all to remember with our type 4s. So type 5s we have here, it was either going to be a castle or an island. And I think the island makes a lot of sense, especially because we were still able to give this guy sort of a mind castle. This city of organized thoughts that are reaching up into the sky and have been put in their, you know, neat, organized, like, look how linear that city is, right? Everything is very structured and grid-like. And I especially love, well, the 5 is wearing glasses, which is one of our inside jokes that 5s wear glasses because they're straining their eyes at all times. But I love that the 5 in our depiction is already an island, yet needs to have a retreat, which is on his shoulder, which is the tiny cabin in the woods. So even the 5, who's the island, has the retreat to get away from it all. Typical 5s, we didn't really have a lot of comments because 5s don't tend to interact with our Instagram stuff too much. That's okay. But yeah, as a 5, I really resonate with this and love it.
You know what, Liz? They're just looking, they're stalking, but they are not commenting.
Oh, absolutely. Well, we can see who saves things and shares them. And it's, you know, whereas the 2s are we're gonna have like thousands of comments from 2s. It's like, you know, 5s, 8s, we're not hearing that much from them. For type 6, oh, how come I'm not able to go to the next one? Let me just, I don't know, it's like my whole computer just froze.
Frozen on the 5.
Frozen on the 5, I know.
We just have to think about it a little longer.
Oh, there we go. Oh, well, that. All right, I don't know what's happening. There we go. Now I have control again. So back to type 6. So the only 2 images that we depicted with other people were 2 and 6. And we thought that that was really important because so much of the identities of 2s and 6s are in relationship to other people. So this 6 is almost receding into the background, and what's coming forward for us is this little, like, I don't even know, what do we call these things? Like cloche, I think, is that the word? Like a little cloche. Inside there is this perfect image where he's here with his, you know, his wife or his partner and their child, and he's holding it all in protection. And we thought that that worked really well for a 6. So this is what Kelly, the artist, actually wrote about, or the illustrator wrote about this. The idea is that he's protecting himself and some loved ones in what he imagines to be a safe and perfect world, when really outside of it all, there's only so much that one can accomplish. He's cherishing those he loves, and he's trying to think ahead in how to maintain the stability of this world that he's created. Such is the tension for the 6. Mm-hmm. So type 7, the sunny side of life here. Again, notice the background is completely a rainstorm and very dark, and yet she is unfazed and not even like, there's not even any rain on her, right? She's just totally avoiding it somehow. One thing that's really important in this piece for us was circles. So even her nails are almost like a fake shape. They're so round. Her earrings are so round. She has this like round bangle on her this bracelet on her wrist. The idea was to try to get across, you know, just sort of like the wholeness and completeness and the sunniness of the 7s. And then of course she has like rose colored glasses, but in this case they're yellow rainbow shaded glasses. And she's just looking up beyond all of it. Also wearing something that's not like a tank top, which is not something we would normally wear when it's raining, but it's 7. So what are you going to do? And from C. Haley Do Stuff, she said, I love this pic, the contrast of the dreary, rainy background, but the 7 looking up in joyous fascination is truly a symbol of our resilience. And then said, love to all of my fellow 7s.
Liz.
Yes.
Hi, it's Scott.
Hi.
This
Hey,
is
Scott.
amazing. Yeah, this is amazing. I love the 7 and the circles. It kind of reminds me that they're just hard to corner.
Good.
I love it. Well done.
Thank you, Scott. Good to see you too. So here's type 8, probably my favorite image of all. And actually we did get a lot of really nice comments from 8s on this, so I'll read you a couple of them. But first I'll just say, again, it was important for us to show a female 8. We thought that was very important. She's already been pierced by many arrows. They're just sticking out of her, and she's got band-aids from probably a previous battle. There's arrows flying at her, and yet she is unwavering in her aim and willingness to engage. Here's what N.M. Stewart said. I'm an 8, and unfortunately 8s are often misunderstood as seeking out or enjoying confrontations. For me to speak up, it has to be something I feel really strongly about, usually on behalf of others. I want to just put this out there. We aren't mean, spoiling for a fight type people. We care deeply, that is all. And that got like 25 more replies. Yeah, so I think it's always really beautiful when we can show sort of that, I don't know, not the stereotypical side of each of these types, right? And then finally, type 9. I think the word that people associate with 9s is peace. We wanted to, this is actually Kelly's husband. She drew him for this one because he is a type 9, but he's got his head in the clouds, and actually his head is disappearing. It doesn't exist at the top. His head is the clouds, which I think works quite well for a 9. Also, gray is the color we've selected for 9s, just sort of getting into a bit of the ambiguity that they kind of live in. But I think what's important here is birds. It's the only one that has any animal life, and I think birds make a lot of sense for 9s. But also he's noticing. His eyes are firmly fixed. And I think 9s are the noticers. Somebody wrote, Ginger Kid wrote, "This is 9." This image captures it so perfectly. I'm also put in mind of the lyric from Imogene Heap's Between Sheets, and here's the quote from the song, "The many windswept yellow stickies of my mind." So that's the series that we did on these 9 types, just trying to give a portrait to each one. And that's actually all I've got for you guys.
Is that all?
Yeah.
Well, everyone, I just, let's go ahead. Oh, go ahead, Ron.
Well, I was just going to ask, as somebody who does, training for groups and workshops and things like that, I think that would be an additional great piece to use on a slide, just to help, again, walk all the way around the different types and show in different ways, insight into the types. So my question is it possible to, like, have you thought about licensing for people to use them, not to reprint them, but to use in a slideshow presentation for trainings, things like that? Have you guys talked about that? Is that possible?
It's possible. I've licensed other pieces. I mean, between you and me, and I guess this is going on YouTube, so I guess whoever sees it, as long as you just cite the 2 of us, you can pull these things off of Instagram and feel free to use them. That does not, I think that's great and beautiful. And thank you so much for saying that. I agree. I think sometimes it's just like, especially when we're teaching over and over, it's like, how many times I need a new way to get around the Enneagram, right? I need a new way to like bring these types into the forefront. But I mean, we can definitely consider it. You can shoot me an email and I can follow up with you on that.
Yeah, just
Yeah,
I think I was just saying, in walking through all the different types, I think it's helpful to, whether it's descriptions or testimonials or images or music or what, different ways that helps people see the type more fully. So that's.
Thank you. Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree.
And I was going to say, Liz, and we can also purchase the printed art, and you can have those up around the room. Sometimes even giving people more time with a piece of art than just in the slideshow can be a really beautiful gift too. And we can get those at the handle there that we put in the chat for you, which is the one about paper.
Yeah, Third Coast Paper. Actually, that works well with our Great Lakes region because the third coast is the Great Lakes, right? This is the third coast of our country. So
yes, that's right. That's right.
Yeah. So
become a part of our chapter, Liz.
Sure. You guys, thank you so much for having me. I hope something I said was helpful or at least just not boring.
No, not a boring minute at all. So we just want to say thank you, everyone. Thanks for being here. Thanks, Liz. We're going to be thinking about you on the Camino, and I guess we're going to be thinking about Lene on the Camino too. Lord have mercy. They're both doing it. You might run into each other.
I hope.
Oh, no, let me tell you what's going to happen, because the first time I went, so we only do the last portion because we're old and we shuttle our bags, and I sleep with my husband in a nice bed and I don't do the hostel thing. And I was so excited to be there and just clipping along. And here comes an older couple who had done what you're going to do, which is the 500-mile trek plus. That is brutal. And I am a little too energetic and optimistic, and started conversing. And I said, well, it's my first day. And they looked at me with huge disdain. Oh yeah, we know. And so you will be on this long, crazy journey, and having done it enough times now, the best part of the pilgrimage is not just your version, but the stories you collect along the way. That then you're going to get a point where you meet people like me who are just like, well, how much do I have to walk to get the stamp from the church to get the thing? And you might have a little resentment. I'm really excited. I hope I get to stay in touch with you and hear about your journey, because I would like to do that trek someday. It's really brutal on the body, and I'm just inspired. Good job. Proud of you.
Wonderful. And you've got a lot of people saying thank you here. Can you see the chat, Liz?
Yep.
You got folks really appreciative. Maybe we'll have you back after the pilgrimage, and then we'll find out what you really think about the Enneagram and a pilgrimage. There might be new things that emerge for you. So everyone, bless you. We'll see you next month. And we have a surprise guest in June that I don't even know who it is yet, but you've never been disappointed yet. So look out, something good is happening. And yes, you see all of her handles are right there. Go to lizcarver.com, Ron, and you'll find all the ways to get in touch with Liz. Thanks everyone for being here. Thanks Marissa for handling the crew today. Appreciate you.
Thank you all. You all have a great day.
I am overflowing with all of the riches